Before we get to the episode, we want you, dear listener, to ask yourself a question. What have you done these past 2 years? You know, the pandemic hit us all really hard. What have you really done other than perfect that matzo ball soup recipe of yours? Nothing. Now, we all want to add purpose and meaning to our life, and we have the way to really, really make your dreams come true. If you're listening, you're likely interested in Israel with hopes of traveling here soon. Well, lucky for you, we've got the scoop on Masa Israel Journey. With an amazing range of life-changing opportunities in Israel, Masa has many, many programs. They've got gap year programs, academics, internships, volunteering, and careers. The pandemic didn't stop them either, promoting options to study remotely while living in Israel. You don't have to be fluent in Hebrew or break your bank account. They even supply partial funding so you can make a positive impact on the world. You can fuel your passion and you can make your travel dreams a reality. Go to masaisrael.org and find out more. This is Eitan Weinstein.
And I'm Naor Menninger, and you're listening to Two Nice Jewish Boys.
In collaboration with Australian Jewish News. Check them out at ajn.timesofisrael.com. Also in collaboration with Arutz Sheva, IsraelNationalNews.com.
On August 6, 1984, Corporal Moshe Tamam, who was 19 years old, took a bus ride from the northern city of Tiberia to Tel Aviv. Moshe was on vacation from his military service, where he served as an instructor of heavy-duty vehicle drivers. He was accompanying his girlfriend to her home in Tiberia that day. But on his way back, he was kidnapped and brutally murdered by 4 Arab-Israeli terrorists. A year and a half later, the 4 terrorists were captured, tried, and put in jail. But this was not the end of the story, it was only the beginning. In Israeli jail, the terrorists enjoyed a high standard of living, which included relative autonomy inside the jail, use of cell phones, the ability to study a degree, and more. A few months ago, one of the murderers, Rushdi Abu-Moch, who was set free after the 35th year sentence ended. He was accepted with celebrations in the Israeli Arab town of Baka-Al Garabia. Moshe Tamam's family was outraged. Today we're honored to have Moshe Tamam's nephew, Dr. Ortal Tamam. Ortal is a medical doctor and towards the end of her PhD researching genetics of preterm birth. She's a Gates Award laureate and a prominent spokesperson of the families of terror victims in Israel who are constantly fighting against the lack of justice against the murderers of their loved ones. Hello, Ortal.
Hey,
thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Today it's only me. Eitan is in America, probably catching Omicron as we speak. So where do we start from? So you were born to the grief, essentially, right? How did it feel like growing up?
Honestly, I don't know anything else. We grew up, I would say, not really thinking about how much we're angry about the murders and how it's unjust, but mostly focused on remembering my uncle and cherishing his memory and trying to build a good life for our family and to be good leaders to Israel.
What can you tell us about your uncle? So he was your father's brother?
Yeah, he's my father's brother. So I only know him from stories.
Yes.
Since I remember myself, we would go every Friday with my dad to the cemetery, and he would tell us about how he was as a kid, how he was a charmer and everyone loved him.
Your dad is the big brother or the little brother?
My dad is the oldest.
Okay.
There are siblings.
Mm-hmm.
And he would say how much he loved animals. He loved horses. So my family is from Chavatzelet Sharon, which is a city, a little town, a bit north of Netanya. And he would play with the horses all the time. And because it's such a small town, everyone would be friends with everyone. So I would just grow up learning about his like charming personality, his funny personality, his beautiful pictures. And at some point you keep hearing the same stories and see the same pictures. And I think that's the moment when you realize that you're not going to have any more stories and you're not going to have any more pictures. And that moment is pretty upsetting.
And you got to know your grandparents, your father's parents.
Yeah, they're still alive and well. Yeah.
So they, like, grieving grandparents, that's a very hard burden for them, but I guess only also for you, growing up and, right?
Yeah, I keep hearing. So I think that both of them digest the grief very differently. And I kept hearing for many, many years how they were so different before than they are today. My grandmother, for example, it really influences her every single day and every single moment. She lived the grief for many, many, many years until today. That's all I know of her.
Right.
And my grandfather, on the other hand, he at some point he stopped going to the cemetery, and stopped going to any of the ceremonies when he saw they had to change the stone in the grave, and he saw one of the stones just laying on the floor. And at that point he realized that, I don't know, realized, but thought that maybe this type of memory is not as significant for him. So they both digest it very, very differently.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely something that shaped our family, and something that shaped our family not only for my dad and his siblings and my grandparents, but also for us, for all of the nieces and nephews as well.
Is there anything else to tell about what happened to him, or was the intro?
Yeah, I would just add that to me, the thing when I started driving, he was kidnapped from an intersection that is about 7 minutes away from my grandparents.
Right.
And when I started driving, and I started driving through this intersection all the time, I realized how close it is. And I think it changed something also in my point of view, to realize that many times when we hear those stories, we think that it's something that happened like far, far away. And then you realize that it happens like right next to your home. And that those 4 Arab Israelis that kidnapped him, they live 7 minutes away from my grandparents. They live 7 minutes away from us. So to me, it was a moment where I realized that the terror is not just a story far away, but it's something that is very close to us, and all of us, sadly, are potential victims.
So how did you start the path of fighting? Or because you could have just as easily just live your life pursuing your medical career. Instead, you chose to be more outspoken. How did this come to be? What was the trigger?
So I think there are two answers to this question. The first one is that I didn't really choose. I was brought and taught throughout my entire childhood that I need to be active in society, that this is my home, Israel is my home. Many generations fought to create this home for us, and I need to be active in shaping it to being the place that I want to live for myself, for my family, for the people I love, and for the Jewish people. And that's why I appreciate people who are activists and trying, even if I don't agree with what they're saying. So I would. That's the first part to my answer, and the second part will be that when I was in my second year of medical school, it was during final exams. The government wanted to release terrorists as they call it a nice will gesture.
Mm-hmm. To
and
whom?
Something to a nice will gesture to the PA, and the Americans were the ones to ask for this nice will gesture.
That's the Obama years.
Yes. And I think that even using these words was something that made me so uncomfortable. I felt as, and it's true that at least few of the 4 murderers that were in the group who murdered my uncle were supposed to be in the 4th release, but it wasn't even that. It was that it drove me insane that I want to live peacefully with my neighbors. That's a goal of mine, and I would hope that at some point we'll enjoy living in close relations with our neighbors. But it just doesn't make sense to me that in order to promote peace, we need to release murderers. To me, it feels like if we want to protect our women and our children, we will release rapists or pedophiles. And I think this was like the moment where I realized that if we're not going to do anything, then this equation of if you want to make peace, you need to promote terror against us, and that will promote even more terror attacks in the future. I wanted to break this equation. So this release was in 4 batches. So after the first one, I went by myself with almost by myself with 2 of my friends, and with like 4 plastic chairs, and we sat right outside of the Prime Minister's house in Jerusalem. And slowly but surely it became a very big event, and many people came, and we would just sit there and wait for people to come over and talk to them. And I realized that we have a lot of support. And we have a lot of support from the right wing, left wing, many people that are just normal people that want to live here peacefully, and mostly want to live here. So I think that was the first time I actually went out and did something.
Did it help?
Yeah, it did. The 4th release, after the second release, it really brought it into the general attention in Israel, and it was all over the news, which didn't happen before this. And yeah, they canceled the 4th release, and I went to Bagatz.
Yeah, the Supreme Court.
To the Supreme Court, thank you. I went to the Supreme Court, and it really, it was something that before that just happened. And when we did something about it, and of course I'm not taking all the credit, because many people joined us. Yeah, it made a difference. And it didn't surprise me that it made a difference. Sometimes all you need to do is just to do something.
Right.
Many people they agree with you, they want to support, but they just don't have the ability or the time or the means to just go and do something. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just need to be that person.
So just to clarify, so the the fourth batch never happened.
Right.
Because the Supreme Court stopped it?
No,
or
no.
Bibi...
The Supreme Court didn't stop it. They said that they're not.
Yeah, of course. How convenient.
Actually, that was an experience by itself to be in the Supreme Court and to see Amy Palmor, which was from the Israeli Justice Office.
She was the CEO
of the
Ministry of Justice.
Ministry of Justice, exactly. So to see her, actually, so they had different types of criteria on which to base the release on. And to see her, the representative of the Israeli ministry, convincing the judges to make the list even longer and to have even more people, or even more terrorists on this list,
right,
to me was an eye-opening experience, because at that point I realized that the government is not the one to support us. They want to do what's comfortable for them, what's comfortable for the system. And if we want, as people, as country, to protect our values and to protect our core principles, right, we have to act for ourselves.
But just to clarify, correct me if I'm wrong, but Amy Palmor, being the CEO, being a clerk, she just, it's her job to do whatever the minister tells her to do.
Right, but at this specific point, well, first of all, I think that if we're looking at reality, we see that those clerks have much more power than they should have usually. And at this specific point, she was doing her clerk job, but saying that based on that, we should include more terrorists in the list, which as easily could have not done that, right? Well, anyway, it brought the issue to the general attention.
Yeah.
And then Bennett said that he won't agree to that. It's hard for me to say that he did something right, but he did back then.
Oh, we'll get back to Bennett later.
Back then, and thanks to that, they stopped the fourth release.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about the murderers? Who are they?
Well, so again, I'll split my answer to the first part is I don't care. I never, and even and if you want, I'll elaborate it on later, even during Al-Midan times when we fought against governmental support in my uncle's murder's play, I didn't care about him. I don't care about what they do, how successful they are. I don't care. I care about my family. I care about my country, and I care about the future, about helping the people of my country to not be hurt by terror again, to prevent the next family that will have to, years and years later, feel the same way that my family feels. So that's the first part.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking, just to clarify maybe to the audience, is because you always hear apartheid, the occupation and stuff like that, but those were Israeli citizens,
right,
with all the rights, with all the privileges, equal to you and me, voting, etc. And this is why basically I'm asking.
Right. Thank you. Yes. So the second part will be that my uncle's murderers, all of them are from Baka-Al Garabia, which again is just a few minutes away from where we live. It's not just in Israel, it's just in the center of the country. We go grocery shopping in the same stores. They live very, very close to us. My grandfather used to live in constructions, so they had mutual...
To work.
Yeah. And they had mutual friends with them, with the murderers. This is also the reason that my uncle back then recognized the area, and which made them make the decision to to murder him. They lived with equal rights, and because they are Arab Israelis and because they decided to murder an Israeli soldier who is a symbol to our country, they became heroes in the Arab society, not all of it, of course, but in some of it, and in the Palestinian society. They became a symbol of going against Israel from within.
Mm-hmm. So you have squares named after them, streets, schools,
yes,
synagogue, churches.
You have squares made for them. They teach about them in school.
Mm-hmm. The Palestinian textbooks, basically.
Right. And sadly, as we saw just not too long ago, when Rushdi Abu-Moch, one of the murderers, got released, it's not just in the PA, it's also right here.
Mm-hmm.
They had big celebrations for them. MKs from our Israeli MKs went there to greet them as heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that, if we're not going to make the decision to change this equation, it's just going to keep happening, because those kids that live in the center of Israel and they see a soldier's murderer get accepted by the MK as a hero, what else are they going to learn?
Right.
What do they even have another option of learning anything else? All they know is, if you want to be a hero, you need to murder. If you want to be a hero, you need to be a terrorist. If you want to be a hero, you need to hate the government. You need to hate the soldiers. You need to hurt the Israeli society. So we're just building the next generation. So it's not about revenge. I don't need to revenge anything. I living a good life is a good enough revenge. And living in
and you live next to Rothschild, so
yes,
it's a good life.
Yes, I do live a good life, thank God. But it's about preventing the next families. For me, that's my perspective of it.
Which obviously we fail at, as we've seen just recently.
Yep.
So can you tell us, you mentioned Al-Midan.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so about 6 years ago, I got a phone call telling me about a play in Al-Midan Theater in Haifa. The play was written by Wali Daka, which was the head of the terror group and the one who decided to murder my uncle.
So you have Shakespeare, Brecht, and Daka.
Yep, exactly.
Basically.
Exactly. And apparently that play was funded by the Israeli government. Now, I just want to make a little note before I continue with the story. As I told you, this group became like heroes to in the Palestinian society, in the BDS movement. So they already wrote books before. Daka wrote books. Daka did, again, we're not talking about high-end writing, right? Very embarrassing to read, but let's just say that the standards are very low. We didn't care about it. And even with the play, we also didn't care about it. When I say didn't care, obviously I don't mean that it doesn't hurt to see, because it does. It hurts to see that we don't have any more memories of my uncle, but his murderers are prospering and writing and having kids. But the thing that was different about this situation was that the Israeli government, was funding the theater and was funding this play.
The theater is called Al-Midan.
Yes, the theater is called Al-Midan.
In Haifa.
Yes.
What do you mean funding? They didn't fund... It's because I studied film. In film, the government also funds the writer
Right.
as he writes. So
Right.
this is not the case. It's not like they paid him to write the play.
Right.
Once the play was written, the theater...
Right. So, at least as far as I know, and at this point, I think I have a pretty wide knowledge. In Israel, the way they fund theater is that they fund it by the amount of plays. So that's how they are able. The theater is allocating the money, but they're paying the theater itself based on the amount of plays, original plays and bought plays, etc.
Okay, how much, do you know how much money was invested in this theater overall?
Yeah, it was millions. It was one of the most funded small theaters in Israel.
Mhm.
And the reason for it was that originally they started this theater to have Arab Israeli theater in Haifa.
Mhm.
So it was actually
Coexistence.
right. So it was actually an Israeli initiative to have it originally.
Mhm.
Obviously, a place that shows plays that written by soldiers, murderers, is not a very coexisting. So obviously, it took the wrong turn.
It's their narrative, after all. Gotta respect their narrative.
Yeah, you know what? I don't care about anyone's narrative. I just care about which narrative my government is paying for.
Mhm. And the funding is going through the Ministry of Culture.
Right.
Also, the municipality funded the theater?
Yes. So the Ministry of Culture and the municipality. Back then, I was naive, and I thought, well, I just need to tell the government that that's what happens, and they'll just stop funding it, because obviously no one wants to fund a soldier's murder, his play. And the other very, very naive thing that I thought is, it was Friday afternoon when I was told that story, and it was Saturday evening, the premiere. So I just thought that if I'll just go there and tell them, the people that come to see the play, I'll just tell them who wrote the play, about his life in jail and what he did to be in jail, they'll just leave.
The audience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I was wrong.
Okay.
I went to the theater and I told them, and I was called a murderer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a paramedic in the army. When they heard that, they said that I'm serving whatever the
occupation.
Yes.
It's a mixed audience, I guess, of Jews and Arabs who came to the play.
Yes, it was a mixed audience. Let's just say that the Jews there are faces that are familiar, meaning it's always the same people supporting the BDS, calling Israel an apartheid state. It's always the same very small group of people.
Yeah, in the ghetto, they would have been the couples, probably.
Yes. So what I thought would be like a week or two of bringing awareness became a 5-year journey. If you want, I'll get into details, but at the end of this journey that was very, very, very long and very tough and very stressful. And
let's dive a little bit in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I think it's important.
Yeah.
So you went to the premiere, you demonstrated, and nothing happened. Okay.
Well, no, it's not that nothing happened. A lot happened.
It was press.
2 things happened. One is that I realized that those people are not people that I have any mutual language or communication with. Those people who support and appreciate my uncle's murder are rude enough to call me a murderer, are rude enough to laugh at me in my face and to tell me, oh, just keep barking. That's what one of the people there said, that we should just keep barking, and they're just gonna keep supporting him. So I realized that those people are not people I can talk to. And the second thing that happened is that it brought the issue into awareness, and we got an enormous amount of support. Enormous. So right wing, left wing. I got, I think, one of the most, I mean, to me it wasn't very surprising. I was brought up in a very liberal high school, very mixed Arab Israeli high school in Jerusalem. So to me it wasn't very, very surprising, but looking at a bigger picture, it was. I got a very big support from Arabs from Haifa. And being specific, I got a pretty big support from artists in Haifa that told me that Al-Midan wouldn't accept them to perform there because they're not anti-Israeli. So to me that was stunning. That was stunning to see, like, how our government supports it.
Right. If it was to me, if it was a private theater with private money, I mean, we live in a democracy. What can you do? But the fact that that our taxpayers' money is going to that, it's just despicable.
Right. And I would say that it's not even about the democracy part. It's what can I expect the people who support the murder of my uncle to have a play? I mean, that's the least of my worries from these people, right? I mean, they think that murdering my uncle, who did nothing to them, they think that the person who did it is a hero. So writing a book, making a play, that's the least of my worries, right? So I have no expectations from my enemies. I have expectations for my government. I have expectations for my people. So I think that was the main part of it. So we got enormous support. And from that support, two things happened. The first one is that the Minister of Culture, Miri Regev, said that they're not going to get any more funding. And also the city of Haifa said that they're going to pause their funding until they're going to further investigate. And then we started basically two different fights at the same time. One was with the Minister of Culture, and the other one with the Haifa Ministry. Both of them went on very different directions. On Haifa, we realized that, you'll tell me if I'm going into too many details. Okay.
If you can go to the details, I think it's interesting.
So in Haifa,
the mayor was Yahav.
Yes.
He was in Israel, you don't have a term limit to mayors. He was, I think, 10 years already a mayor. Very powerful years. Mayor.
Very powerful mayor. So during city council, I came to speak during city council. They all hugged me. They all kissed me. He came over to me and said, I promise you they would not get a penny. They did a vote, and they voted against it. And then Al-Midan appealed against the decision. And there was supposed to be a very small court discussion about it. And it was supposed to be only a formality. What happened was that I came to court. Back then I was living in Beersheba. So to me, to get from Beersheba to Haifa was an investment. But I wanted to be there and to make sure that everything is right. So I got over there, and what I found out was that the mayor sent the main lawyer of the city to argue that they agree with Al-Midan and that Al-Midan will get all the money. So basically what happened was, and the other thing, when when I was in court and I asked to speak with the judge, and I said, they can't just do that because the city council agreed on something. I found out that the mayor made sure that it's not going to be on record. So basically what happened, Haifa is a very complex city. And the mayor has to be okay with everyone. And apparently even when it goes against his values and most people's values.
Because he needs to pass a budget
Right.
in the council.
Right.
And in Haifa, in the cities in Israel, you have a council with parties, and there's the Arab party in the council of Haifa. And you need their vote to pass the budget. And as a mayor, if you don't pass the budget, you get fired by the Minister of Internals.
Right.
Basically.
Right, exactly. So basically what he did was a PR stunt on us to get all the support from us and then just send someone else
Stabbed you in the back.
Right. So that was a first of all, it was very upsetting. I'm talking about a few days before he was hugging me and telling me how much all those promises. But moreover, it was so dirty. It was so...
You got a lesson, though. A
Yes.
very valuable lesson in politics.
He got a lesson as well, I would say.
Okay.
Because from that point on, I realized that I need to, let's say, take off my gloves and do the hard work. And what I did was to be in contact with in personal contact with every single person from the council, and not just right before the votes, but all the time, to send them information, to build the cases against the theater. And I'll just say maybe one sentence about it. So obviously, as a doctor, when I see a symptom, I know that it's just a symptom. It's very rare that you'll see a symptom with nothing else that comes with it. When you hear of a theater that supports a soldier's murder, you know that this is not the only thing that they do. And starting that point, what we did, me and my good friend, is to start digging into their history, into all the events they did, into all the money they moved from place to place. And we found out that they do terror support, proper terror support, under the name of a theater. They barely do theater. They barely do art. What they do...
They funnel the funds.
Yes. When I say funnel the funds, I'll just give you an example of one of those things. So, for example, one of the events they did was a fundraiser for terrorists. So they would have an event
under the headline "Peace
Yes.
to everyone."
No,
Peace in the Middle East.
No. They were so confident that nothing will happen to them, and they were right, because for many, many years nothing happened to them. They would not even hide anything. They would not even hide anything. So they did a fundraiser for murderers in the Israeli jail. And then took the money from people and transferred it to those murderers and to
their jail accounts.
Yes,
basically.
and this is, they are criminals, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is not, it doesn't pass any. So it's not just about our values and our principles. This is about the law. This is funding terror. They should have gone to jail about it. The other thing that they would do is, well, I'm not even talking about all the BDS events they did. They didn't care about taking the Israeli government's money for the events, but they did a BDS movement events. They did different events to see how we can stop Israel from being a Jewish country. They brought a spy from Syria. It sounds like it sounds like I'm making it. It sounds like I'm making it up. I would not believe myself if I wouldn't say it myself. And then they told the police that, oh, no, he's not a spy, he's a poet. Yeah. So the police said, okay, it's a poet. So I would, for months and months and months, we would build all these cases against them, and I would bring it to the Minister of Culture. I brought it to the city council, to all the different parts of the city council. We brought it to the police. We brought it to the Minister of Justice. So the police also opened an investigation against them. And also part of the Minister of Justice, there is a part that gives the permission to different NGOs to receive money from the government. Basically saying...
it's tax, all kinds of tax.
So it's not... it's tax, but it's not just tax. In order to receive money from the government, you need certain approvals.
Yeah, certificates.
And those certificates says that you're acting in good faith and you're acting according to what you're supposed to. So we started a very long process in those channels. And
did you get support? Because Miri Regev is from the Likud, it's a right-wing government, a right-wing party.
Right. So we also got a very big support from Miri Regev. Having said that, at some point, the theater threatened that they will sue the Minister of Culture for not properly stopping the funding. And Miri Regev didn't want this bad press, so she wanted to, I don't know if wanted, but she agreed to bring them back their money plus extra money for getting their feelings hurt.
Compensation, yeah.
Whatever.
Really?
Yes.
It's absurd.
Well, I agree with you.
Did you talk to her about it?
Yes, and I said, this is not happening. Now...
You're standing in front of the minister and you're telling me that.
No. I'm standing in front of the minister and in front of 25 other people in the room. They all are saying that we should just take the deal. And I'm saying, if you'll take the deal, I'm going to build a tent right outside of your house and I'm going to protest and everyone will join me. So this is not happening. I think that that's like the benefit of acting based on your values and really with no other I don't need anything from them, you know? Like they work for us. They work for the people and they need to represent us and our values. And, you know, if the majority of the people in Israel would disagree with me, that's one thing. But I know that at least in this matter, I represent the majority and the big majority. So yeah, I stood there and it was a very important moment for me. It's not nice to see all these people go against you, people that are supposed to be on your side. But I'm very glad we did it. And then Regev took me aside and asked me what's going to happen if we're going to go to the Supreme Court. Said, well, I'll win the Supreme Court. I knew at this point, I knew what type of material we have. I knew how strong the things that we found against them. And
even though the Supreme Court judges are not on your side, they'll have no choice, basically.
Right. And then I told her what I think every politician likes to hear. Well, and if the Supreme Court won't agree with me, you can just blame it on the Supreme Court, right? But if you will be the one making this decision, I'll make sure that everyone will know that. So they canceled the decision, and as expected, Al-Midan took the best lawyers, and that the Europeans paid for, of course, and we went to the Supreme Court. And before the Supreme Court, we spent endless amount of hours building the cases, sending it to the Minister of Culture, which they could have just disregarded everything we showed there. But luckily they read it and used it, and we won, and no one thought we're gonna win, besides like very few of us, but we won. And they took all the even before you won in the Supreme Court, they took all the certificates from them, allowing them to get any funding. But winning in the Supreme Court was
sweet,
very sweet, and very, hopeful, very hopeful, showing that you can really make a difference. And I'm talking about 5 years, even more than 5 years of constant.
It's a full-time job.
Yes, it was a full-time job in addition to my medical studies and in addition to my PhD, and it was exhausting, but very hopeful.
And what happened? So the theater,
they closed.
So it doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't exist anymore.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And just a side note, the Europeans funded it too, the theater.
Right, but not the majority of the funding was from the Israeli government,
right,
and from Haifa. What the Europeans usually funded are events, so the BDS movement events, and different types of events.
Right. That's amazing. So how do you see, we're jumping to the present days. We don't have much time. What do you think about this government now?
I think it's terrible. I think I voted for Bennett. I was proposed by him to run with him, but I'm not a politician. I love what I do. But I was a very big supporter of him. And I think that what this government did, putting terror supporters, proper terror supporters, as part of our government, it's not even a red line. It's way behind the red line. We showed just a few weeks ago that our party in the government started very conveniently a moment after they signed the agreements. They started a new organization that is linked to an existing organization that support terror families
in Gaza.
Yes, yes, they support their families of the murderers, meaning the money, we showed that the money that they asked for is allocated to go into those organizations, and the Israeli government's money is going to support terrorism. So I think, I had a lot of criticism about the previous government, and I'm loyal to my values, but I'm not loyal to any person and to any politician. And I think that if we just look at the situation clearly, this is insane. This is insane, and I hope this government won't last for a long time.
Did you write Bennett after?
Yeah. So during the 4 different elections building this government, on the first one or the second one when he didn't pass,
It was the first one.
Yeah, I was literally physically with him counting notes to help him pass.
Right, counting the ballots because basically he needed like 100, 200 ballots more to pass the threshold, and he lacked them, and eventually he didn't. He tried to recount.
Right. So I was
with
one
volunteers.
One of the people right next to him counting the votes, and we were in close relationship for sure, and I felt very comfortable contacting him. And Ayala Chaket as well. At some point when I wrote to him and I said, like, we can do it differently. Let's talk. Let's think of how we want to build it. I can help you. We can help you. He got other families of terror victims to support him.
The Hajjaj family.
Yes, yes. They mainly...
We're talking about this round now,
yes.
The 4th round.
Well, he got our
also
support.
Before.
He got our support even before, but during this round, they started the entire campaign for him in one of the biggest cities in Israel. And...
So he used the families of the victims.
Yes, yes. And I hate saying that because to me, I didn't support Bennett, okay? Just to be clear. I didn't support him as a person. I appreciated him, for sure, but I didn't support him because he was nice to me or something. I supported his party because I knew that they're going to serve our agendas fighting terror. And my goal and my primary goal is to prevent the next families, to create a reality where terror is not worth it. So he used us, and right after the elections and before the government was signed, we spoke quite often, and I offered my help, and he was using that as well. He told me, I promise you we will not do it. And we're talking about what we know now, like days before they signed, and during May, if you remember, like during the
war,
they promised that nothing will happen, and they asked me to write about it, which again I didn't write about it because they asked me to, but because I thought that's the right decision, which apparently was again a PR stunt just to stall and get some more time. And right now, they blocked the Hajjaj family on Twitter and everywhere because they don't like to be criticized.
Right.
So
what did you write him afterwards, after the betrayal?
I wrote to him that we're very disappointed, that we feel used, that we could have helped him build a Zionist government and be part of it and be a substantial part of it. Because there is a solution to it. Well, let's just say it this way. The same people that can find a common ground with Ram, I'm sure can find a common ground with a Zionist government.
Apparently,
no, I'm sure they could, but I'm not sure they wanted to.
The hate for Bibi is
right.
Stronger than anything.
Right, and again,
we can light up Tel Aviv with the power of that hate.
Right, and again, I had a lot of criticism for his administration, especially fighting terror. But when you lose a sight of your core values, you get lost, and that's what I wanted to remind him. So yeah,
he didn't respond.
Not to this one, no. He did respond to many of the ones before.
Blue.
But yes.
Did you see Blue?
Yes, he definitely saw my messages. as well as Ayelet Shaked that met. I wasn't in Israel. I live in between here and Cincinnati. And Ayelet Shaked met with a bunch of my friends and promised them how much she's not going to do it, and she does everything she can to find a solution. And obviously that was a lie as well. So yeah, if you have any recommendations who to vote for us for the next time.
I think you should run. You don't have a choice, but we shall see. In 2 minutes,
Yes.
Tell us about your research.
My research. Well, so I'm a medical doctor, and I also do a PhD, so it's a dual doctorate program. I research genetic of preterm birth in Cincinnati's Children's Hospital. We have the leading lab researching it. So basically what I was trying to do is to find the genes that will cause spontaneous preterm birth, which is about 40% of all preterm birth. And I'll just say that this is the number one cause of child mortality and morbidity in the world. So over 1 million kids die every year in the world from being born premature. So I found a gene that I then proved the cause. I found a gene with researching big data in women. And then I proved that it causes preterm birth in mice as well. And right now I'm working on, and then we got a big grant and the support of the Bill and Melinda Gates Award, which is probably the biggest or one of the biggest awards you can get. And now I'm looking into therapies. So
to find a cure for the bad gene.
To be able to recognize in advance who are the women that are likely to go into labor early, and then hopefully to prevent it. And again, we're talking about preemies. So besides the 1 million preemies who die every year, we're talking about a lot of morbidity among kids that will stay with them for the rest of their lives. We're talking about very high cost to the families and to the countries. And we're also talking about something that in high-income countries, we can treat and we can have the facilities, but in other countries, you can't treat those kids.
Right.
So hopefully, if we'll find a way to diagnose it in advance and treat it in advance, it will hopefully bring a lot of good to the world.
Does the lab still accept donations, or you don't?
What do you mean?
I don't know, if someone wants to support, to help, is there a...
no, actually, we have...
You're good.
We're good.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay. You're on social media?
Yes.
How can people...
You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook, or Tal Tamam. And yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming in the rain. It's very stormy outside. Really, thank you. It was very inspiring.
Thank you.
I think
Thank you for having me.
your uncle would have been proud.
Thank you.
Before we go, we are sponsored by Arutz Sheva. Check them out at israelnationalnews.com for amazing content in English about Israel. Also, the Australian Jewish News. Check them out at agn.timesofisrael.com for the Australian angle of the Jewish news. Last but not least, we also accept donations because Bill Gates still didn't fund us, not yet. But so go to twinjb.com/donate and help us out if you like what we do. And that is it. Also we have mugs, guys. Does it taste better drinking
Delicious.
BDS tears?
Yes.
Yeah. Guys, go to twinjb.com/merch and get yourself a mug. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.